And welcome back. It's time for Opinion Court. Please do get in touch with us. 22422 is our SMS line. And if you're online, use the hashtag Opinion Court, that's one word, so that we can track your conversation. I'll reintroduce my guests to you. To our far right is Edward Kisiangani. He's our resident political analyst. Dr. Roslyn Akombe is an IEBC commissioner. And to my left is city lawyer Kamodo Waiganjo. You're all welcome to the program. We are discussing IEBC's preparedness and the general election timelines tonight. So I'll begin with a general question. I'll start with you, Kamodo. What do you think of, we're less than 90 days to an election. Do you believe IEBC has done enough to sensitize Kenyans on the election?
I think Kenyans have been sensitized sufficiently about the elections. I think the turnout for the nominations for the major political parties told the story that people are aware there's an election coming and they know how important it is. And that's not just IEBC's responsibility. I think if we are honest with ourselves, we have some challenges at the infrastructure level. And I think the Commission has had many challenges, many of which are not of its own making, but which makes the next election an infrastructural challenge. And I think how they manage the next month, particularly the next month as most of the timelines are being passed, is going to be critical in people having faith in the process. But we have some significant challenges. Okay, Paul.
I think a lot of people know about this election. And if you look at the reactions about the nominations and the other people, I mean the presidential elections, especially, you find that people have developed a lot of interest in this election. And some of them regret why they did not register. But I think that IEBC did not get enough money to sensitize people with regard to why they should vote, because that is really what we need to do. Why are people going to vote? I think they also need to be assisted. IEBC can play a role to take people away from tribal matters, tell people that we need to vote around the issues. But nevertheless, you look around and you say the biggest challenge that IEBC has is that not very many people are sure what technology they are keeping in their desks, because we don't know whether it will work. Just today you heard that there were some voters who turned up to check their names and their names were missing. It would be a tragedy if on the day of election people find their names missing, or probably they asked to be transferred to other places, but then they find that transfer didn't take place. So they could be in Bungoma, but they wanted to vote in Nairobi, and they can't travel on the same day. So I hope these challenges can be sorted out.
Yeah, and certainly that's why there's that verification process that's underway. But you are making a credible point that even few Kenyans knew that today was the start of this verification exercise, and part of your mandate is a civic education. We haven't seen that forthcoming. Why?
And I think we've been doing a lot of work in terms of voter education. I just need to be able to differentiate the responsibilities between voter education and civic education. The Constitution and the IEBC Act provides for the IEBC to carry out voter education. Civic education is a responsibility of other stakeholders, of other institutions in the country, civil society, education, schools. Those are responsibilities that they have as regards to civic education. I think we've been doing a pretty good job in terms of coming out and informing Kenyans. I think maybe what we must say is that the party primaries did divert a lot of attention from the timelines, from the different activities that were there. But from the very beginning, we've been coming out and talking about the biometric voter verification process. You have seen that we have now commercials that we've been running on television. We have also been running radio commercials on that. We've been writing in the media. You must have seen a few op-eds that have been done by commissioners talking about the verification. So I think there are various things that we are doing, but I agree that we have to do more. And we are doing more as a commission to try and reach out to Kenyans using the various local radio stations to be able to inform Kenyans of what is going on and what is at stake and why it is important for them to come out and verify their biometrics. All
right, and KPMG is of course still auditing the voters' roll, yet simultaneously we're having our voters going to order the register, and some think that the cart may be before the horse. Can these processes happen simultaneously and credibly?
From a technical point, yes, actually, because what you need to do, remember that when you do the audit of the register, you're not making any changes to the register. You're just auditing. You're trying to look out at the errors that are there. You're trying to look at the exceptions that might be there in the register. You're trying to look at, are there deceased voters in the register, because you're running that audit against the data that you receive from the Registrar of Deaths and Births to make sure that that data conforms with what you have. So those processes can run concurrently, because they are both processes that are meant to actually clean up the register. So if you do the audit of the register, you get the recommendations, because again, I repeat, KPMG is not making any changes to the register. They're auditing the register, looking at those changes, while the biometric verification process, voters individually go and check their data, and our clerks and our officers can make changes at that point if the data is not correct. Then these two processes will come together, both the audit and the verification, and then we'll clean up the register that will present to the Kenyans as a final register.
Legally, will the findings of KPMG's audit be final, or can they be challenged or amended, Kamodo?
I suppose they can be challenged, but you see, and if you look at the way the law that required the audit of the register was structured, this process should have happened before actually even registration of voters happened. That is why the delays in Parliament were actually very unfortunate, and sometimes people blame IEBC, and IEBC is also a victim of a delay in Parliament, the court cases that were brought that slowed the process. But in ideal world, that audit should have happened, and then from the findings of the audit, then would then determine how do we ensure not just that we correct the errors in the register, but also ensure that these things are not replicated. As it is now, it's almost a fait accompli that the only errors that KPMG can find are dead voters who are in the register. Those sort of minor things that IEBC actually didn't need an external person to do. You didn't need KPMG to find out some of these things. But we're actually having to work with very poor timelines. And I think one of the challenges that we have is that we assume that the only actor in the electoral process is IEBC, But the truth of the matter is there have been very many actors who have compromised our ability to do what should have been done, including, the litigation that has happened, which sometimes failed to take into account the context and the timelines with which we're operating. If you look at the political parties themselves and some of the delays they themselves have had in getting their processes in place, if you look at particularly the litigation, those issues, and Parliament, I forgot about Parliament. If you look at the delays that happen in Parliament in terms of operationalizing the law, what we have done is have actually created a crisis for the Commission, and it is therefore having to make pragmatic decisions which may not meet the intent of the law, but have to be done the way they are, because we must have an election in August.
Right. So what should the audit have included besides recommending that dead voters be removed, etc.?
Remember, what was the principal complaint that forced the need for an audit of the register? One of the protagonists, ODM in particular, alleged that there were about 3 million or so illegal voters, not dead. We're not talking about illegal voters.
Right.
That there were people there were certain technical errors in the register that were actually included there to facilitate rigging. Those sort of allegations. It wasn't just about that, because cleanup will happen up to the last day. People will keep dying even on the day before the elections. So that is not something that requires a KPMG audit. What they were looking for is even a systems audit. What sort of software is managing this register, and how credible is that software? That is what the allegations were. But obviously there is no time to do that sort of comprehensive audit. So we have to work with what we have to ensure that we have an election in August. That is something we need to own as a country, and not throw it at the feet of IEBC.
But also the bigger challenge, my brother Kamoto, is the fact that it's assumed that the Registrar of Death and Birth already knows everybody who died in the last 4 years. That is not true.
The system is not interlinked, and most people don't report this.
So I don't even know whether IEBC is going to do that. But I think even before you blame the politicians, the problem is actually political, because the whole election process is a political matter. And the starting point was this current IEBC suffering especially the group that we have in office, is suffering an image crisis which was transferred to them as a result of the 2013 and even 2007 elections. Nobody expects you to deliver a free and fair elections.
I think that's a stretch. You cannot make a blanket argument. Nobody.
Maybe it is an extreme one.
Especially
at the time of the conflict in Parliament, one side of Parliament thought IEBC should remain structured the way it was to deliver a free and fair election. Another group felt that if it is reformed, that is the only time that it will deliver a free and fair elections. Now, when you put both of them together, this IEBC is a hybrid of the two. And they still have suspicions, the two political wings that are major in this country have suspicions that maybe somebody will try to influence the IEBC. So they have, first of all, to work on their image and win the confidence of all the political players who are involved in this election.
Is that possible? Is it possible to convince everybody that this will be an impartial body? Certainly part of the political game is to bring a level of doubt. At least
some standard. You know, they have to set their own standards, and I'm sure they have an ISO certification or something like that, performance contracting. They must calculate that what would be a credible election, what should we do we might not meet everybody's demands, but some standard that will be approved that, look, if we reach 50%, 70% of what they are demanding, then this could be a fair election.
I'll allow you to respond on the credibility question first.
Yes.
You see, Anne, credibility is earned. I mean, and Dr. is right about it. That credibility is earned based on what you're doing, based on the transparency in the processes, based on how inclusive you are in how you get everybody around the body, around the table to discuss issues and deal with issues. That is what the Commission has been doing for the last more than 100 days that we've been in office. We've been trying to reach out to all stakeholders. We've created a forum for ensuring that we have the political parties on board. We have now established what we call the Election Technology Advisory Committee that is required in the law. Looking at the lawyer in the room here, and that ETAC has a responsibility to oversee the technology. We had a very long, detailed discussions today, and the ETAC is made up of representatives from Jubilee, representatives from NASA, and representatives from ISACA, which is the association, professional association in charge of issues technology. And we had very, very, very frank discussions on what the expectations are in terms of technology. And we saw, you know, the level of commitment actually from all sides to ensure that we do not have a repeat of 2013 in terms of technology.
And how do you intend in this round to guarantee that technology is not tampered with?
I think one of the most important decision that this commission made, the new commission has made, was to ensure that we have an integrated, you know, we have the technology that is provided by one provider, which was a problem that we had in 2013. You had different players coming in last minute to deal with issues of technology. So this commission and the leadership of Chairman Chebukati ensured that we have only one company that we are going to be dealing with. The system, the law requires that it's integrated, and it is integrated. What we have done, I mean, you have, for those who have had the opportunity to go out today, they have seen how the kit has been used today for purposes of verification of voters. It's a simple gadget. It's a very simple gadget. I wish I'd remembered to bring it here with me. It's just an iPad.
We have pictures of it on the screen.
It's an iPad. It's a very portable gadget, and it has everything in a modular form inside that one kit. And so we are working. I think one of the biggest challenges in terms of technology that has been worrying us, obviously, is the coverage for purposes of transmission of results. The coverage of a telephone. And we know that in this country, it's only about 75% of the country, or it's 78% of the country that is covered by 3G network. And so what we've been trying to do is work with the various telephone providers to see how we can cover the entire country, so that we do not have any lapses in terms of technology, in terms of the network failing when we start transmitting the results.
It's a little late in the day. It's 88 days to the election. How do you?
Well, it's not late in the day, and tomorrow we are starting very serious discussions. We've been worrying about it, and so we've gone beyond worrying and trying to find now solutions. We've been working with the CAA on getting all the stakeholders together. And remember, these are commercial providers. We're sitting around the table. working with them on how we make sure that in places where we don't have 3G network, they can provide satellite network.
Right.
So I think that is one area that we've dealt with. The other part that we were worried about in terms of technology that we've managed to deal with is the issue of power, because it's not every part of this country that has electricity. So what we did is that the gadget that we have has enough power to be able to sustain us for over 36 hours. So even if the elections, I mean, normally the election should be able to take only less than 12 hours. But should they go beyond 12 hours, the gadget, the KINS gadget, still has the power to be able to go on for 36 hours. So those are some of the ways that we are working to ensure that that the technology failures of 2013 are not repeated in 2017. And we also have several backups that I might not go into the details of doing it, but we do have several backup systems that are all technology based.
Kamala, how critical will the seamless use of technology be to guaranteeing the credibility of the election?
I think it would be very important for the technology to work, but I would caution IEBC not to oversell technology as the answer to Kenya's election problem. Because technology is only as good as the people who use it, and technology does go wrong, and it is more important that IEBC is credible than that it has working technology.
Right.
And so my greater investment would be in credibility, in believability, as opposed to selling the story to Kenyans that finally we can have a credible election because the systems will work. No, let me finish.
Let me just explain there.
No, I understand. By the way, I understand.
You're a lawyer.
Let me finish.
Yeah, let me just explain that, because it's a very important point that we need to clarify to the Kenyans. IEBC is not selling the technology as a solution. As an election expert, I can sit here and tell you that I do not believe, that we have all these discussions in places that I have worked of saying that technology is never a solution. It's not the solution. It's building institutions, trusting those institutions, and coming to a level where you believe that if you have given a responsibility to an institution like IEBC, IEBC is going to deliver. But unfortunately, our laws are there. Unlike 2013, in the 2017 elections, use of technology is mandatory. It is not a choice. It is not a choice that IEBC has to make. It is mandatory. It is a requirement of the law.
Yeah, I think the point I was making is this. In Gambia, where the opposition won, they had the elections with marbles. You know what I mean? And they had a credible election that people believed in. My fear is that the more we sell, the more we highlight the place of technology and how it's going to be seamless, the more when the technology fails, I don't even want to say if, when the technology fails, it will then be equated to the failure of the election. That really is my issue. And so it's to say, especially in this part of the world, where I want to follow what Professor said, part of the fact that the election will be rigged and that the electoral body is partisan is part of political conversation. It doesn't have to be factual, which means that any electoral body has two responsibilities. One, to ensure that it obeys the law, of course, but more important, to ensure that it expands its constituency of stakeholders. Sometimes I think the Electoral Commission invests too much in the political parties at the exclusion of very, very many other important constituencies who don't have the sort of stake that the political parties have in ensuring that you don't have credibility.
Who should the goodwill be coming from?
It should be coming from, I would invest a lot more in the media, a lot more in the media. I would invest a lot more in what I would call non-partisan civil society. I would invest more in the churches, which have a huge reach, so that every Monday I communicate with these bodies about even where the challenges are, including saying we are investing in technology, but good people, this thing can fail. The other day we had Safaricom collapsing. It's important that we tell people that the fact that technology failed does not mean the election has failed. What we want is that, Doc, when we see you, we know whatever it is, whether it's marbles or the tablets, you will give us a credible election. And that is very, very important, more than technology.
And just to reinforce your point there, my brother, the IEBC, one of the things that it has done on the political level has been to waste time on issues that they shouldn't be dealing with. Your role is not to do legislation. Your role is to implement what has been legislated upon. Parliament passed a law, and the law was that the counting of voters should be done at polling stations. Then you walked to court to challenge that. You know that you have only 3 months to go. and you didn't tell the public what you really are missing if you don't announce the presidential results. So we thought that you are taking too much politics in. Implement the law and ensure that you empower your officers, the returning officers, to announce credible results which appeared at the polling station.
Let me allow you a quick rejoinder before we go to our final comments.
I mean,
on the question of your credibility and what you've done to build it, and the fact that, you know, at the end of the day, people should be able to trust technology or not, that IEBC is a credible body.
I totally agree with Kamodo, and that's the point that we've been trying to make, of ensuring that we come out and reach out to Kenyans. And by the way, one of the things that Chairman Chibukati and all of us commissioners keep saying all about is that our number one stakeholder is actually the Kenyan voter.
Yes.
The number one stakeholder is the Kenyan voter. The political parties come, and we've been engaging with the civil society. We've had meetings with Kura Yangu, Sauti Yangu. We've had various discussions with Transparency International and others. We've had discussions with the business community, actually, that has been very supportive, that has played a key role in this country. We've had discussions with the religious community, and we keep them on board as long as we move on. I think that
and do you get the kind of response that gives you the indication that they trust you implicitly?
No, I mean, I think the more we engage, you know, if I look back now, more than 100 days since we came into office, when we started the discussions with whether they are political parties or civil society organizations, there was almost, you know, a different attitude. And as we engage more with them, you actually see more openness, and you see more, you know, they're giving you a chance. They're saying, okay, we've seen what you've done. We've seen what you've done with the voter registration process. We've seen how you put the national ID as a unique identifier to ensure that you don't have duplicates. We have seen how you have tried to go out and encourage more people to register.
So you feel there's a measure
that there is a measure of goodwill, and we want to build on that goodwill, because that is really what we need in order to ensure that we have free, fair, and credible
8 days to build on that. Okay, we just very quickly, I want to clarify, when will we have the final recommendation from KPMG on the voter audit?
Our expectation is that by end of May, they should be able to give us some. It
should be a definite date, because I think that there's a requirement of 30 days. It was supposed to be a 30-day process.
Yes.
So when do 30 days end?
Well, we can start counting from, usually we would count from the period that we gave them the data. We were only able to move the data, to give them access, not to move, but to give them access to our data and establish offices for them within the IEBC to work from the 24th of April. So you can make your calculations from there.
I want to move on finally to the question of numbers, and there is concern by some political actors that the KPMG process, or rather the audit process, I should say, may be used to suppress their voter strength in certain areas. What do you tell politicians when they give you that argument?
I mean, well, look, we will only go by the data that we have, and I liked the point that Kamodo made before, that you know, every institution has its role. Everything is always put onto the IEBC as though we don't register births, we don't register deaths. We get the data from institutions that are provided for in our law to provide to register people who have died or to register people as they are born. So in terms of the numbers, we will be going strictly by what we have. We cannot remove people from the register whom we do not have data to show that they are deceased. So we will be, I mean, we are a very, you know, very objective organization. We are here to ensure that we maintain that impartiality as we move on. We'll be looking at the statistics, we'll be looking at, and if there's no concrete information, concrete data, we cannot remove you from the register.
All right, Kamodo, you know, we've heard NASA say that they are 10 million strong, you know, that they have 10 million registered voters. Is that a feasible claim?
Well, again, this is political conversation, because, you know, there are very many assumptions that are made as political parties bandy out these numbers. In fact, sometimes you wonder whether we should have an election, or whether we should just have a census and, you know, just have a census and say this is the population, so therefore this is the new president. I think there are very many assumptions that people make about how people will vote. And sometimes it's insulting on the intelligence of Kenyans. And I think if there's anything that people are learning, is that the voter of 2007 and the voter of 2017 is a little more sophisticated. He may not have gone the whole hog, but he's come a significant direction from just going the predictable route.
Could you give us details on that, the variables that would affect these perceived support bases?
One, there are certain core areas in politics that you expect are going to vote particular candidates. I can guarantee you 90% of the people, 95% of the people in my county of Murang'a will vote for Jubilee. And I suspect 90% of those in Siaya County will vote for NASA. So those are given. But there are a lot more people in the center than we have had in any other election. So I suspect some of those areas and counties that are being allocated very liberally will surprise us in terms of, one, voter turnout, and two, in terms of their voting patterns. That's number. Number two is the question of turnout. I have said here before that the issue in 2013 was tyranny of turnout. It was not so much tyranny of numbers. Whoever is able to marshal their voters to come out in large numbers, it may not matter how many people registered if people don't turn out to vote. So those are some of the underlying issues that one must take into account as we buddy up these numbers. What is important to encourage Kenyans is that at the end of the day, if you have a voter's card, it is your constitutional, in fact, it is your legal, in fact, I suspect it should be an offense for you not to come and vote. If you don't, you should always shut up your mouth and never complain about how the direction the country is going. That is a message that we must continually preach.
Prof, on 10 million? 10 million
on 10 million, I think this is what you call in politics the Cobra mentality. The Cobra mentality occurs when a Cobra is threatened. It increases its size when it's facing you, and you think it is bigger than that it is usually.
It opens its mouth
yes, it's a Cobra mentality, because this is a battle, and everybody must acquire that Cobra mentality to intimidate those that are opposing them. So in this case, NASA has claimed it has 10 million. I think it is a frivolous argument from a professional point of view, because there are no members registered called NASA. In fact, if they are minimal. Even there are no members, you can say, are registered as Jubilee. But there are those allegiances that you're talking about. You are already sure people will vote regardless of whether they belong to the party or not. So this Cobra mentality has eaten into them, and that is what is controlling them. Each one will try to say something, intimidate others. You have seen even one has traveled to Israel. He could even come back and tell you he talked to Jesus. And when he arrived, so when you when you hear that Raila Odinga talked to Jesus, you know, who also went there a few years ago, he might also have talked to Jesus. So that when for example, Raila Odinga comes back and says, I talked to Jesus, and even Paul, then Uhuru will also answer back and say, I talked to Jesus, but I also was able to see King Herod.
But you have the solution to that, Prof.
Yes, so
let's just all talk to Jesus ourselves.
Yes, So the point is, 10 million. Right now, we don't know how the poll register is going to be. I think what political parties should do is not to hype up this and even raise the expectations of their supporters, but to just say, it's enough to say, I will beat you in this election, like in a football match. And then you say, I already have a strategy to beat you. But to talk about 10 million, then you will end up with an election where one candidate gets 5 million or 4 million, and then they will claim that the difference between 4 million and 10 is 6, so the election has been rigged. That is not good for our country, and they should stop talking about the numbers. They don't know. They don't have a poll register that talks about 10 million. Even the 18, 19 plus might be revised downwards.
Can you really, just finally, really expect political actors on either side not to talk about numbers? I mean, this is what they do when they strategize. They say, how many votes can you get from this region? Let's bring in these other political players. Let's get certain defections to win certain sides so that we can.
Of course, they have their own calculations, but some of those calculations are just hallucinations. They don't exist on paper. I mean, on the ground.
Right.
Because somebody will even claim they have 12 million, and then you say, where are these numbers? To do that statistically and scientifically, you must come out with a certain data. Now, we don't have that data. We hear there could be about 18, 19 million. We don't have that 18, 19 million. Maybe it will be revised downwards. But I'm not condemning them. They must just check that this can be a dangerous thing if they don't reach that level. They can use other corporate mentality tactics which exist without necessarily talking about numbers, because these numbers are raising expectations which might not even be there. You have also to factor in the voter turnout. People might even refuse to turn out to vote just because they don't like what is happening on the ground, and so the numbers will not add up.
All right, Dr. Kombe, I'm sure you don't want to comment on that, or do you? I see you smiling a lot. Comments,
no
10 million strong.
No comments. All that I can say is that as the campaigns begin from the 28th of May, we hope that Kenyans will ensure, or the politicians will ensure, that they don't use any language that is divisive.
That's true.
Or raise expectations, as Prof is talking about, because what will happen in cases like those is when somebody will then come and say, mine were this number of votes, and because I didn't meet them, IEBC must have done something about it. So, you know, IEBC must have stolen my votes. So we want to make sure that we keep the narrative to the issues, you know, so that we avoid creating or raising tensions in the country, or dividing the country, balkanizing the country into various ethnic groups, because we do not want that for our country.
And I thank you all for your views. We're back with the sport after this. Thank you.